Welcome to the opening session of the new IRS Rail webinar series on Rail Baltica, Opportunities in Europe's latest mega project, presented by the International Railway Summit. I'm Jules Omura, the Managing Director of IRITS Events, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session. One of the key missions of the International Railway Summit is to help rail sector buyers find the most innovative solutions and help them create a competitive supply chain. During the summit, key decision makers are matched with solution providers and they take part in one-to-one meetings. So it's fitting that over the next couple of sessions, we are learning about the future prospects and procurement strategies of Rail Baltica, one of the biggest rail infrastructure projects currently underway in Europe, and one of the active attendees of the summit for the last few years. Today, in part one of the Rail Baltica webinar series, we'll explore Rail Baltica as driver of economic development in the post-COVID recovery. We are fortunate to have the support of eminent speakers with us today, and we are very grateful to Rail Baltica for their support. We'll be announcing the scope of part two at the end of this webinar, and the full details will follow in the next few days. If you're interested in shaping the debate and leading the discussion, we'd like to hear from you. If you're interested in sponsoring our webinar sessions and take part in a signature matchmaking and one-to-one meeting program, do get in touch with us. We're tweeting live during this webinar. Follow us at Rail Summit, and our hashtag, which is appearing the screen now, which is hashtag IRS Rail Webinars. If you enjoy the session, do continue the debate on Twitter and LinkedIn. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our guide today, Simon Fletcher, Director for Europe at the International Union of Railways, UIC. UIC is a technical body representing the global railway sector, and most recently they have been credited for coordinating the sector's approach during the pandemic. Simon has worked for UIC since 2003 and as its board member since 2009. Having most recently been juggling with two hats of being the Chief Standardization Officer and Coordinator for Europe, he assumed a newly created position of Director for Europe last month, signaling Europe's growing importance for UIC. Simon is known as UIC's man in Brussels, although this seems to be only half true, given that I catch him in different places crisscrossing Europe every time I call him. He has certainly attended and chaired many of our summits and is therefore well placed to guide us through Europe's latest mega project, Rail Baltica. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Jules, and good morning to everybody. I don't know what the weather's doing where you are, but where I am, it's grey and horrible and raining, but we need the rain. Now, obviously, through this next couple of hours, we've got a very, very interesting series of presentations and an opportunity for it to be nicely interactive, despite the fact that we are doing this as a remote event. There is the opportunity to respond to a few polls, which we will be showing you as we go along. Also the opportunity to ask questions either via the chat facility, which you can see on the screen, or via the questions facility as well, or you can simply put your hand up and say that I'd like to ask a question, please. And then we can take it from there. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this morning. I'm not going to go on and on and on about Rail Baltica, because the first speaker is going to be telling us all about that. And I think, Anusha, if you can run the first poll, that will help us also to set the scene for the topics that we're going to be discussing this morning. So the first poll which we're going to run is, which of these should be the highest priority for Rail Baltica? Is it long-term value for region, for example, sustainability and multimodality, economic revitalization and railways life cycle cost reduction, short-term opportunities, for example, helping the post-COVID recovery, which of course is something that is very important, and an equal balance between long-term value and cost timeline. You can all vote now. This will be on the screen for about 30 seconds. And please don't hesitate to give us your opinion in all of that, and then we'll have a look at the result of that a little later on. Now, we're moving straight through to our first speaker, and that is Kasper Brisken's, oh, I've got that pronunciation wrong, no doubt, who I've known for quite a while now, and through these various summits and so on that we've been participating in. He's the head of strategy and development at Rail Baltica, and he's going to be giving us an overview of what it's been like for a mega project like Rail Baltica to have had to go through the current pandemic that we've been experiencing, the business downturn, of course, that has taken place as a result of people having to be furloughed and otherwise unable to work, and also the work that they are doing now to recover from that pandemic. So, Kasper, you can see from the results of the poll, it's long-term value for the region that comes out top. But I will leave you to digest that as you go through your presentation. The floor, sir, is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Simon, and also thank you for a kind introduction, and also thanks to Jules and his very dedicated team for setting this up. I know your team has worked very hard to make this a very interesting event, and of course, without saying, I'm very privileged to be part of this very distinguished panel with colleagues and railway professionals, industry leaders, and take a few moments of your time to quickly introduce the Rail Baltica project, and of course, as Simon introduced, also how we have been faring during these extraordinary times, but also, and very importantly, how we can use Rail Baltica and also other European and global mega projects in order to promote post-COVID recovery and also longer-term economic development. Let me share my screen right away. If the organizers could confirm that you are seeing the screen now.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And you see the full screen presentation, I hope, right?
Not quite, not yet.
Okay, let me fix that for you.
Yes, yes, we can see the full screen.
Wonderful. This slide little thing here. Okay. So without any further ado, just a quick summary about Rail Baltica. For those of you who are not familiar with the project, I'm very proud about Simon's phrase about Europe's latest mega project. Mega project it is indeed, not just for the Baltic states, where we hail it as the project of the century because of its scale and complexity in numerous areas, but also, of course, because it is one of flagship initiatives in Europe. It's cross-border. It's a unique project of its kind because it involves at least 3 member states directly, but at least 2 more member states indirectly. It involves a number of other European players. And of course, this is also seen as a great example, even at this stage we are at the moment, of best European cooperation, because we see also in our tenders and in the projects that we are running at this advanced design phase, that this is turning to be an excellent showcase of how Europe, but also global partners, are coming together to help deliver a wonderful greenfield project. And greenfield is another key buzzword for us, much more than a buzzword, because it's a very, very important opportunity for us. And here on this slide, you can see the geography. We are connecting the entire Baltic region and the whole of Northeast Europe, also including Finland, with the rest of the European Union railway network, And very importantly, we do not see Rail Baltica as just a railway project. It is much more than that. It is actually the laying groundwork for a new economic corridor. And as you see, it's a mixed traffic line as the future backbone of that connectivity. We plan to have different types of traffic, both passenger and freight. And on the passenger side, of course, it's the high-speed passenger services, night train services. Very happy to see the renaissance of these services across Europe, and hopefully that will continue in the new normal following this current situation. Of course, a lot of also regional open access and then PSO traffic expected, and critically, of course, also freight. So we have 7 international stations, Tallinn and Pärnu in Estonia, Riga Central Station and Riga International Airport in Latvia, then Panevėžys and Kaunas in Lithuania, and a spur line to Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, of course, to also enable the connection between the 3 capitals. And then, of course, continuing onwards into Poland, Warsaw, and beyond in the European railway network. And the yellow line, of course, represents the freight connection, starting all the way up in the port of Tallinn, the port of Muuga, which will serve as the critical interface with Finland, then continuing to Salaspils, just outside of Riga, the second major intermodal facility, all located on the crossroads between the newly built Rail Baltica and the European and the Russian gauge railway, the existing infrastructure. And some of the key technical benchmarks, again, this is 900 kilometers of greenfield track alongside a number of service facilities, 7 international stations, close to 30 regional stations, maintenance facilities, 3 primary intermodal facilities, so a whole ecosystem. ERTMS level 2, very closely following the developments in that area, especially with regard to the new communication standard that hopefully emerges in time for Rail Baltica to be one of early adopters of FRMCS. Of course, electrified with very high and very ambitious length of freight trains, longest in Europe when it's developed, and our designs will support that, a 1050 meter. Also axle loads of 25 tons, up from the usual 22 ton, 22.5, and again speeds of up to 250 for passengers and 120 for freight. And we will be using the so-called Swedish loading gauge, of course, to enable high capacity freight shipment. With regard to Rail Baltica and other, I hope I can generalize in this regard also in the presence of colleagues from another major European megaproject, the Brenner Base Tunnel. So I think I could speak on behalf of the wider megaproject community in saying that, of course, these megaprojects play a critical role in promoting European, not just Baltic, but the European post-COVID recovery, both in the short term, and this first slide addresses more of the short-term considerations, but also to serve as a catalyst for longer-term development. We, of course, are all aware that the infrastructure investments, if they're timed well, if they're calibrated well, if they're integrated well, then of course they have very high also multiplier effects. And from that perspective, we're happy to see that Rail Baltica is moving forward. Because of the dedication of some of our international partners, and then my admiration here goes out to many international contractors we have, especially those from Spain and Italy, for their perseverance and dedication to continue to support our project in the design phase during the immense challenges that our societies have been facing. So in that regard, there has been no disruption for Rail Baltica, and we continue to be a locomotive also for the local economies, and hopefully also with a massive European added value in terms of supporting jobs both during the delivery phase and clearly also going forward into operational phase. Rail Baltica current capex or investment estimate is around 6 billion. So clearly that, when you compare that to the recently announced 750 billion, a very timely and sought through commission proposal for a recovery package, that sounds a bit small. But again, putting that in the context of the Baltic states, this is by far the largest infrastructure project that Baltic states have developed, and clearly that will stimulate the economy going forward, especially as we enter the construction phase starting from next year. And therefore, it is also important, and then we've seen that in practice, that Rail Baltica has contributed to the resilience and robustness in the rail supply chain. In other words, both allowing companies to maintain operations during a crisis, because a project like Rail Baltica hasn't stopped, but also to promote the ability to return to normal operations post disruption. And that's also one of the key impacts of such mega projects on economic recovery. Sustainability in European Green Deal, that of course also underpins our philosophy in developing this greenfield project. It also creates both short-term and long-term opportunities for companies in this area. Multimodal integration, another key pillar of the development of Rail Baltica and pretty much any other major connectivity or transport mega project. We will be connecting airports, ports, dry ports, intermodal facilities, and all of these investments in these other infrastructures are calibrated together with Rail Baltica, again, to promote economic recovery alongside, of course, achieving the goals of multimodal integration. Rail Baltica also, in reassuring the industry that we are going forward, that nothing stops because of COVID and other challenges, also encourages private investment that is being planned and is being taken place in parallel. In the next slide, I will allude slightly more on the long-term implications of that, but generally, it's not just the construction dynamics of Rail Baltica, it is the ecosystem that develops where public and private entities cooperate, drive common synergies that plays a role here. There are also major opportunities for small, medium-sized enterprises and startups. One very obvious area is, of course, innovation and digitalization. Again, because we are a greenfield opportunity, we want to be digital native from the very beginning. And that clearly provides a lot of opportunities to both Baltic, European, and international companies to play part in this process. Something that we call a dig once infrastructure synergies implies, of course, a very familiar concept to many successful mega projects, is that when you put a shovel in the ground in your railway corridor, make sure that you co-develop and co-synchronize at the same time developments of other types of infrastructure, ranging from the digital infrastructure, maybe first and foremost, in terms of fiber, 5G deployment, but also other areas like energy, industrial, regional infrastructure, even defense infrastructure implications along the Rail Baltica railway wayleaf. And finally, and also already mentioned that 5G and rural connectivity. Again, there are towns that will have stations. Some stations will have international caliber stations, but the benefits that Rail Baltica and such projects bring are not constrained just to those localities which have stations. By bringing 5G, we are boosting connectivity, and we've seen in these challenging times the importance of broadband connectivity. So even remote regions which may not have a station will benefit from Rail Baltica because of strengthened digital connectivity going forward. This next slide kind of brings us into a more longer term perspective, because Rail Baltica clearly is a long shot and with a lot of important long-term benefits. Some of these, and there's a reason why there's an iceberg picture, I will explain this. On top of the waterline, above the waterline, the visible tip of the iceberg, are the benefits that these mega projects create, such as Rail Baltica, that are quantifiable. I mean, you can provide traffic modeling and estimate the number of passengers, the number of freight tonnage that will develop there, and the businesses associated, the benefits that this will bring. You can also calculate the environmental benefits either through climate change reduction or air pollution reduction. In the same fashion, you can calculate the benefits coming from shorter travel times for both passengers and freight, the safety improvements, better noise profiles. There's also a GDP multiplier, especially during the delivery phase. But that only scratches the surface of the iceberg. That's only the visible part. And oftentimes, this is the part which is reflected in the formal cost-benefit analyses. And sometimes that's what people focus on. But at the same time, there's a huge area of benefits, oftentimes catalytic, unquantifiable, in many ways unpredictable, which are under the water. but there are very real benefits ranging from transit-oriented development around the stations to industrial and regional development enabled by this connectivity and infrastructure, better access to healthcare, tourism development, all kinds of technology transfer, digitalization, the innovation spillovers that I already mentioned. The very fact that Rail Baltica and other cross-border megaprojects contribute to a more dynamic European single market by connecting countries, connecting regions in itself is a major catalytic boost, which then, and this is kind of the bottom line of this, then leads to more longer-term conceptual, extremely hard, if not impossible to estimate effects on economic integration, competitiveness, mobility and connectivity, including patterns of mobility and productivity. And finally, very importantly, especially in the case of Rail Baltica, also impact on national and regional defense, which is obviously impossible to quantify. And that's where Rail Baltica is absolutely privileged to be part of this very exclusive club of mega projects, including those who have already shown to Europe and the world the major success and also this very interesting division between what's above the water and what's below the water, the invisible part of the iceberg. Öresund is my great favorite example. I've spent some years living in Sweden, have had the pleasure of seeing how the whole Öresund region developed following, of course, the construction of that fixed link. And we are taking a lot of inspiration from projects like that, including the Eurotunnel, which was built with the careful hands of Simon also being involved. There are also other projects in a similar phase as we are, including High Speed 2, including Lyon-Turin. Well, Brenner-based is a bit more advanced, but again, also another inspiring project. The Fehmarn Belt fixed link, very happy to see the more recent way forward for that project. And one more project in our area, currently in a more conceptual phase, but something that we see as very much synergistic with Rail Baltica, which is the Finest link, hopefully delivering in a longer future fixed connectivity between Tallinn and Helsinki, complementing and extending the physical Rail Baltica line, and maybe also drawing on all of the different dynamics that was spurred in the Öresund region with the Öresund fixed link. And then my final slide is just a quick wrap up of some of the prerequisites on how do we maximize the potential. Of course, I'm basing this on Rail Baltica, but we are not doing things from scratch. We are learning from the best. We are benchmarking across the world. So I think this would resonate also with other projects, and maybe our colleagues from the Brenner base could lend also their views on these critical prerequisites. So one for us is to capture the greenfield opportunity, both in terms of delivering a multimodal, well-integrated ecosystem of different infrastructures. The other one is the big ones, building other infrastructure at the same time as we are building Rail Baltica. And the third element is to think life cycle. We have to adopt a life cycle perspective from the very beginning. Next up, smart and future-proof from the beginning, from day one. And hopefully we have strengthened and developed those credentials for Rail Baltica. Rail Baltica needs to be optimized, it needs to be digitally native, but it also needs to be modular and scalable enough to be able to react to challenges in the future. Expansion opportunities, development opportunities, also enabling development in other related areas. Seamless connectivity. Of course, we understand that this is becoming the norm, and especially when we talk about seamless multimodal connectivity for both passengers and freight. Standardization and configurations for the terminals and the service facilities, integration between different modes of transport, including between trucking and rail. So here, although we sometimes speak about modal shift, I would like to emphasize more the modal integration part, because Rail Baltica should promote a more efficient supply chain in terms of the road trucking covering the last mile or the more immediate distribution in terms of the job division, and rail, of course, carrying the heavy load, capitalizing on economies of scale. And of course, reliability is absolutely critical there. A dynamic market is an absolute prerequisite for Rail Baltica to succeed, or frankly, any cross-border mega project. So we are looking towards the development of a future well-functioning open access market, one that is transparent, that has also transparent rules, transparent infrastructure management, and hopefully also a uniform set of operational rules for Rail Baltica. Green and sustainable, I don't think that in this time and age it needs to be, it can be overemphasized. I mean, we are talking about our ambition to have zero or very low impact during our operations. We're also trying to see how we can minimize the impact during the delivery phase. You know, modal integration is also critical, but also from a wider sustainability context, also important that Rail Baltica and all of the entities surrounded you know, in the Rail Baltic ecosystem are good employers. That this provides sustainable, high quality employment and therefore also adds to both economic recovery in the short term and long-term development in the long term. And the second and the final point, and I think this also nicely leads me into Harold's presentation to follow, is that of course Rail Baltica, like other mega projects, is a nice opportunity for application of smart funding solutions. We are very generously funded by our European partners. Up to 85% of the funding comes from the European Union, managed and safeguarded by the European Commission, and we are very, very grateful for that, and we appreciate the opportunity. And at the same time, the responsibility to deliver that European added value, to deliver that cross-border connectivity, and to deliver the synergies which Rail Baltica can promote. So thank you for your attention. I'm happy to give word back to Simon, and I'll be happy to take any questions going forward. Thank you.
Kaspers, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. I particularly liked the concept of the digital native. So that I thought that was quite an interesting expression, and where Rail Baltica is attempting to move. Now, there's a second poll which is on the screen now. Which of these do you think will have the most impact? And you are asked, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, to select one of those. So connected construction sites, supply chain and asset management, use of UAVs, satellite and AI tools for surveys, railway simulation tools based on BIM data, and integrating these tools to form a solid foundation for the future. All vote now, please. And as you're doing that, allow me then, please, to introduce our next speaker, who Kaspers has already warmed up a little bit, because this is from Harold de Ruiters, who is the Director of Investment at the Innovative and Sustainable Transport Directorate of DG Move at the European Commission. I'm going to say no more, Harold, other than to hand the floor over to you and say that you're going to tell us about smart funding solutions. And whilst you're just sitting yourself into the seat, just to say that the result of the poll is on the screen, and it's all about forming a solid foundation for the future. Kaspers as the second poll from that. Harold, the floor is yours.
Simon, hello, good morning, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to be with you all in this webinar devoted to Rail Baltica. And you see the slides here on the screen, and I'm very happy to take you through two main parts of policy that I would be presenting to you: the TEN-T and how Rail Baltica fits as a game changer for passenger and freight transport in the South Baltic Sea region in this policy. And secondly, also, of course, to talk about money. How are we going to be able to finance this project and to make sure that this is a reality in time for the whole overall TEN-T network to be a reality in 2030 for the core and 2050 for the comprehensive network. And what I liked, Simon, from the presentation of Kaspers, who really warmed up indeed, was also the word of modal integration, because we always talk about modal shift, but I think indeed Rail Baltica is also an exemplary project for modal integration. Let me start with the TEN-T part first.
If I may interrupt, before you start your presentation, if you can turn on your webcam, please, so the audience can see your face as you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules, for doing so, and apologies for having not done before. Indeed, let's turn slides, please. The TEN-T, as I said, is a policy that is firmly there to ensure that we have a real internal market where every member state is seamlessly connected, where we have missing links tackled, and the Rail Baltica is clearly one of them, and bottlenecks removed. And that, of course, should allow to have sustainable transport solutions for the future, as we can see in these COVID times, are dearly needed when we come to a standstill, and where rail has been providing a continuous backbone for the transport of goods throughout Europe, and now also many more citizens taking the opportunity to travel by rail between the capitals and between the member states. And of course, this will boost the economic growth. Can I take the next slide? Thank you. Then, of course, this TEN-T framework, as I said, has these two layers. The strategically most important parts where Rail Baltica is situated, and the wider network to be realized by 2050 of the comprehensive network. Next slide, please. Linked to this, we have a very strong investment needs policy with EU funding. We know that the core network will take 500 billion to realize for 2030. In the North Sea Baltic corridor, 83 of that in the network of 9 corridors. It's an enormous investment amount that has to be pledged. And if we look at the overall amount, including the comprehensive network, we are at 1.5 trillion of investments. How do we address that today? Today we have a Connecting Europe facility with 23.7 billion, and we have a proposal which is slightly higher for the next period, of which there is 1.5 billion for military mobility. I'll come back to that in a moment. Of course, we also have other funding sources which are really important to realize our policy. The European Structural and Investment Funds, where there was 70 billion available, and we are still, of course, pledging the last part of that in these years. And the European Fund for Strategic Investments, which has helped also to mobilize a lot of transport projects, and 34 billion so far have been invested through the EFSI. If we look at the Connecting Europe facility, where we stand today, is that we have already allocated 22.8 billion, and we have more than 700 projects up and running through 15 different calls. A lot of that money goes to the core network, 88%, and 77% of it goes to rail. So we're real rail aficionados, as you can see from these figures. And that has to do with, of course, climate tracking and climate mainstreaming, because we need to also take into account the Paris Agreement and ensure that all investments go in particular to those transport modes which are most climate friendly, which are rail and inlet waterways, but also all the other systems that make these transport modes function, like ERTMS for rail, ITS for road, and so forth. Now, of these projects, the concrete deliverables until the end of our funding program, which is 2023 for the current one, we'll see 282 bottlenecks removed, in particular in the rail sector, and with thousands of kilometers of railways and inlet waterways upgraded, realized, and equipped. We have still at the moment reflow calls ongoing, because sometimes some money comes back by projects which are delayed due for instance, to environmental impact assessments or legal procedures or procurements which are contested. And that money is not lost for the program. We recuperate that and we tender it out again. And very soon we're going to see the results of a call that we launched end of last year, and which is open, which was open until March, and where we will see the results very soon. On this map, you see the 9 corridors, and in red you see North Sea Baltic corridor, and very clearly you can recognize Rail Baltica connecting from the north in Tallinn to Riga, Kaunas, Vilnius, and then Warsaw, and the rest of the corridor stretching towards Germany and Benelux thereafter. If you take the next map, you will see the difference with this one We have extended the corridors a bit in the Connecting Europe facility negotiations, and it means in particular that the North Sea Baltic corridor stretches all the way now to the north of Finland and connecting into Sweden, thereby addressing the gap that we had on our map for the Baltic, for the Bosnian Gulf, and really then encompassing and better connecting also the Scandinavian part of our European map, and some other adjustments that have been made to the corridors in the rest of Europe. If we turn to the next slide, you will see Rail Baltica in this North Sea Baltic corridor. As I said in the beginning, it's a real missing link. And if we go on the next one, I can explain also, but very shortly, that the Rail Baltica for us, Kaspers has already explained in some detail, but for us, this is really a geostrategic opportunity. Because at this moment in time in Europe, the Baltic Sea region is not connected to the UIC gauge railway network of the rest of Europe. And we are addressing both the Baltics as well as the Iberian Peninsula, which also has a different gauge, in order to make sure that they are fully connected to the rest of the railway network, and that we get this single European railway area or space. At the same time, of course, Rail Baltica is connecting all these cities, ports, and other strategic objects. I don't dwell on it. Kaspers explained in quite some detail on this slide. Can I take the next one, please? Important for us, and that is a legal obligation coming from the TEN-T policy. Rail Baltica has to observe these parameters. The track gauge, as I explained, but also the fact that we have electrified ERTMS equipped line with these higher speeds, with an axle load and a train length going beyond the European minimum requirement of 740 meters. But as this is a greenfield line, as explained by Kaspers, we can go, of course, for the higher requirement here in this project, which will only benefit to further make Rail Baltica a success. Next slide, please. Then I do not dwell on this one because it was explained extensively by Kaspers, and I would like to turn to what could be the next steps in the next slide. For us, it's really important that Rail Baltica can now come into the implementation and building and construction phase. We are nearing the completion of the detailed technical design going on all sections, and that will be allowing afterwards to start the works as of end of this year on some parts and next year for most. We have a very close by state treaty between Poland and Lithuania. Kaspers explained that it concerns, of course, the three Baltic states, but for us, it's very important that Poland is fully on board and connects as of the city of Auk towards Lithuania with a new high-speed line, so that we have a continuity of these criteria into Poland and that we have a real functioning corridor. It will also be important to us that land acquisition can be completed in order to start those works, and then we can scale up the constructions through also a joint procurement strategy. That is, of course, not easy. So we need really, and that's a key point for the European Commission, we need a decision also on how we deal with the implementation structure of the project ongoing now, and afterwards we need a decision of the infrastructure management. These two decisions are quite essential to us. I will not dwell on the next slide, so that is about investment volumes and what is situated where, but I want to turn to the remaining slides on the money for the next period, because we are often getting this question: will there be sufficient co-funding available from the European Union to realize Rail Baltica? In here you can see what we have proposed for the Connecting Europe facility, and the budgets for the three sectors of the CEF are clearly spelled out here and what we want to address. So there is no doubt that the Commission stands firm by its engagement to make sure that these projects that we have been already hearing about before, Rail Baltica, but also Brenner, Fehmarn, Lyon-Turin, etc., will all be realized. We do not engage in 750 plus projects if we have no long-term view. And we do have that long-term view, and we are sure that our investments will also shore up these projects in the next years. Of course, it's not for me to give the green light. I mean, there will be the summit here in Brussels discussing the budget for the next 7 years on the 17th and 18th of July, so in 2 weeks' time from now. And we'll, of course, see whether Europe is strong enough to take an engagement on that. Important for us is that it is a complete proposal, and I will show in the next 2 slides that it is more than the Connecting Europe facility as you know it today alone. First of all, on the next slide, there is a little new component, which for us is important because we address military mobility in a dual use perspective. We are not going to invest for military mobility only, that is not our role, but where this infrastructure can benefit both the civilian and the military at the same time, then we would do so. And you can think of the following, let's say, perspectives. For instance, for rail, it is very important for the military that there will be a sufficiently robust capacity on rail, and it expresses itself in particular through the length of trains circulating, which in Europe is very often segmented in accordance with the capacities of the national networks, and also the loading gauge. So we are looking at that, for instance, for rail in particular, and we have a very good project pipeline already lined out for this specific envelope with investments which would make sure that we can step up capacities both for civilian and for military when they would need it. And the same we would do also on the road network, where there are sometimes restrictions due to, for instance, bridge limitations, which we want to tackle in the same way. So then I come to my last slide. And here you can see that we are not only talking about CEF, and CEF then also including military mobility, but also a number of other sources. And these are continuing from what we already had, the research source Horizon Europe. Today we have Horizon 2020, in where we will have certain parts of our transport investments tackled. But more importantly, directly for Rail Baltica will be the others that are coming now. Invest EU, because that is a guarantee instrument, and it will be in particular important for equipment of fleets and also equipment of existing fleets, for instance, with ERTMS and so forth. Then we have the new strategic investment facility as part also of Invest EU, where we would also have a number of strategic assets covered of the transport side, for instance, hydrogen. And the 2 last ones may be even more important for Rail Baltica, the Recovery and Resilience Facility with a huge budget of 560 billion, and of course also the regional development funds, which will remain important for the realization of the TEN-T in the cohesion countries. And it has been reinforced by REACT-EU and the Just Transition mechanisms throughout the crisis, first of all, and now the new budget proposal. In those 2 last ones, there resides also an important part of the answer of the full financing of Rail Baltica in the coming years. In fact, especially the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, will have a possibility for the member states to dedicate budget to identified projects through their plans, the national plans they will submit to the Commission, which the Commission will then approve, and which can then lead to further money flowing in grants and in loans. And I think that shows how the Commission gives a complete answer, fully backed up, in order to get to a realization of Rail Baltica. I therefore am, I think, Simon, quite confident that we will be able to realize Rail Baltica. It's a battle, because money is scarce and it will not be easy to get the approval of the heads of state to get there. But I'm confident that together we will find it, and I hope indeed that in 2026 we can have this type of seminar from a railway link traveling from Berlin via Warsaw to all the way to Tallinn. Thank you. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed, Harold. And I think we can all, as a result of that, become digital natives, as I think Caspers was referring to in his presentation as well. Thank you very much for that insight. I'm sure that there will be a number of people that will seek to develop on the points you've just made about the funding mechanisms when we get to the Q&A later on. I just want to very quickly, because touch on one thing, Caspers, and to take the opportunity to inform you and everybody else here that yesterday at our General Assembly, we recognised the Rail Baltica's application to become a member of the UIC, and so as of today you are a member of the UIC. Congratulations and welcome into the family. One of those things, of course, is you mentioned it in your discussion about FRMCS. I hope that bearing in mind the fact that you are quite rightly with the opportunity to become one of the first practitioners of FRMCS, you're going to get involved in the work that the FRMCS group is doing at the UIC.
Absolutely, and again, as I mentioned, there is the potential. You know, if we follow the timeline that maybe the TSIs are developed by 2022, it certainly fits with our timeline to be one of the early adopters. And in fact, as we speak, we are conducting a CCS strategy study at the moment with Ramboll as our partner, where of course these subjects are also tackled, and we are looking for the opportunities of again, being one of the early adopters. And clearly, we will be joining the working group in UIC. We very much appreciate the work that's done by UIC, by ERA, by the ERTMS user group, and many other stakeholders. And of course, we want to be part of that community, again, to capitalize on the greenfield opportunity.
Harold, thank you, Caspers. Harold, I'm given to understand that the Commission has had some concerns regarding some of the way in which Rail Baltica has been established or is being governed. Is that a real concern? I mean, or is it just grapevine stuff? Which is it something you want to share on an event like this?
Thank you, Simon, for asking. No, it's a real concern. I mean, we are following up all 750 plus projects in great detail, because we're responsible for the spending of that money. And if the money is not spent in time, then it will fall back to us, and it would be lost for our overall budget. So if we have delays in projects, they are of course of concern to us, and then we analyze why and what could be done about it. On this corridor, in particular, Rail Baltica is one of our key cross-border projects. We have European coordinator Catherine Troutman working on it constantly together with her team and with ourselves, and we really devote a lot of attention. Now, to be precise, yes, we would like to see one integrated implementation structure. And we have been asking the same from projects like Brenner, Lyon-Turin, Seine-Escaut, and Fehmarn. So all these cross-border projects, we have learned from the past that if you have one integrated structure, you can be better in its implementation. You can have better procurements, you can have less time delays, you can have a coordinated tool there, this Rail Baltica structure, that would then allow the easy communication with the capitals, the three capitals involved, with us, and make sure that money is spent, public money from the public hands, from taxpayers, is spent in the best possible way. So yes, we do have a concern, and we are working on it, and we also see it's evolving in the right direction, and we think that it will not harm, because we have been proactive on it, and therefore we will be able to deliver the project in time. That's what we're doing.
And I'm sure it's in all our best interests to help Rail Baltica to cause that to happen, particularly as you highlighted in your presentation, Harold, the fact that this is in effect an element of the missing link in that part of Europe. And of course, we're always delighted to have a new railway coming along that is connected to the UIC gauge,
yes,
as it makes interconnectivity and interoperability indeed much simpler, and encourages the creation of the single European railway area, which of course is something which we're striving towards. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to draw a veil over that particular very very brief interview and move us on, because we are conscious of the time. And we have another little poll to show you just before the next speaker, who is Christian Pirsalu, who is the Chief Procurement Officer from Rail Baltica. We're moving into ladies and gentlemen, now into a session with a bit more of a focus on procurement, and the question is very simple. And probably easy to answer for lots and lots of you on here. Which of the following contractual mechanisms are you familiar with? Fixed price lump sum, target price remeasurable, or prime contractor? And you can all answer now, as Christian prepares himself to tell us all about the procurement strategy at Rail Baltica. One of the big important things, of course, is with a project of this and the challenge, of course, which the European Commission has just highlighted, is making sure that the money is not only being spent but being spent wisely. And I'm sure, Christian, you're going to tell us a little bit about that as we move into your presentation. There you go. There, before you speak, Christian, is the answer. That the half of the people who've responded think that it should be target price remeasurable. I'm sure that means something to you as a procurement chap, but the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that lead in, and let me also share the screen as well. Right. I'm not sure if you can see my screen, my slides at all.
Well, we can see an awful lot of icons, but what we can't see, Christian, is your presentation.
Okay, then it shares the different screen. Hang on.
And we're still looking at your desktop.
Right, hang on. Let me do this again.
Well, whilst Christian is doing that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just take an opportunity to remind you that you can ask questions in the questions section, and also you can use the chat facility if you'd like to sort of discuss some of the things that people are talking about, and we'll try and pick up on some of the questions at the end. There you go. Now you just need to full screen it now, Christian. No, you've lost it again. You had it there.
Right, so you can see the presentation, I hope.
No, I can see you.
Okay, let me do this then.
See your desktop.
Now it should be fine.
No, yeah.
Yes, now we can see it. Now we can see it, Christian.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you for
it.
this meeting, and thank you for the poll results as well. It's interesting to see what the participants think about the pricing methods and how familiar they are with one or another. So I will take you through today the procurement main aspects of the Rail Baltica project, and tell you a little bit more also about these particular pricing methods, what have been asked about in this poll as well. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, firstly for joining this webinar, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I will tell you first a little bit about the timeline. So where we are today, of course, this is a very ambitious timeline, which we are aware of, but we are tackling this on a daily basis and really putting all efforts into to make sure that we keep the timeline. And where we are currently, as you can see on the screen as well, is we're still delivering design. And as the design different phases for different sections and elements are being completed, we are already tendering construction as well. So the first construction tenders have already been launched and are active from the end of last year. And this year we are moving this further in all three Baltic countries as well. And In terms of the procurement, the way that we see procurement at RB Rail, then this is different from the historic administrative view of procurement, and which has especially been prevailing in the Baltic states, that procurement is simply an administrative function in the organization without sort of adding any real value to that. We have a very different view, a much wider view on procurement and what it does, and that actually procurement is a key step in the whole project life cycle that delivers real value, and that is where we have to put in all our reasonable efforts to make sure that we enable the best tools and contractual mechanisms for the project management to deliver the successful results at the end. What we have to consider, first of all, the needs of the project and business itself in terms of time, cost, quality, and as well the most efficient use of resources. What is also important is to have continuity from the procurement phase through the contracting and project implementation for the whole sections and tenders that we do. In some cases, what can happen, and what I've also seen in some other projects, is that there can be a disconnect between the procurement and the contract implementation stage, where the approach suddenly changes. So this is something that has to be continuous and has to follow through, that from the start the approach remains and is kept. So that is where also the internal links have to work quite well to ensure that there is a continuum, and that there is clarity also for the market and for the contracting partners. Then we have to abide by the procurement law, of course, with the stakeholder and beneficiary requirements. We have many stakeholders. Obviously, we are a project that spans multiple borders, so we have multiple stakeholders to also take into account. And then we have something that is called the contracting scheme, that we call the contracting scheme, which is an agreement between the Baltic countries and the project implementers, where the main considerations and requirements regarding how procurement has to be done are stipulated. Of course, we have to also take into account the various risks that exist, and we have to do our best to mitigate it. And that is where procurement has one of its key values, to really tackle and mitigate risk during the procurement phase. So this is something that that is one of the key aspects for procurement as such. Of course, we are open to claims, and that comes with the transparency, and that is something that we are proud of, to be transparent and fair. And we also conduct these annual surveys amongst the supplier market. We have to take into account also business continuity and sustainability, and that is one of the reasons why some of the qualification requirements may seem a bit harsh at the beginning, but this is for the reason that we aim to also have the contractors present after the contract main completion, for the continuity during the warranty period, for instance. And supply ethics also is something that we are keen to uphold and require also from our suppliers and contracting partners. And all this adds into our supplier relations and the reputation that we intend to keep as well. And then we have, I will not dwell in detail in that, but just to bring out that we have an internal procedure to start and launch and undertake procurement exercises within the organization as well, and that is something that we undertake very strictly as well. In terms of the procurement governance, then we have an overall project procurement policy, which we call the Common Procurement Standards and Guidelines for the Rail Baltica project, which is available on our website as well. And this is what all the implementers of the project abide by. So they follow this, and in addition, they have their in-house procurement rules and policies that follow this overall overarching procurement policy for the project. And in this policy, you will also have available the minimum qualification requirements, which you can familiarize yourself with and see what the project as a standard requires. In some cases, there may be some deviations from these requirements that may be due to a particular market segment or a particular reason in order to ensure competition, for instance. According to the contracting scheme, the agreement between the countries and the project implementers, then RB Rail as a coordinator applies Latvian public procurement law as well. So this is one thing to note, that we undertake procurement according to the Latvian public procurement law and in the Latvian public procurement register. And of course, we are very keen to apply best practice and make sure that we take the best experts from the market to work on the project, as well as train and school these experts and keep the knowledge fresh as well. But in terms of best practice, something that is important to note is that we don't simply intend to apply best practice that exists in the Baltic states, but we aim to bring best practice globally to the project and develop best practice in the Baltics. Okay, some of the opportunities that I've brought out on this slide, I won't dwell on this in detail. You have from the slides available also the link to the website where you can take a look at the opportunities on the website in the procurement plan for this year. Some of the opportunities in terms of the consolidated materials, for instance, and construction tenders have been brought out also on this slide. And some others. So this is only a snapshot of what opportunities exist. And in terms of the consolidated materials, then that includes rails, sleepers, turnouts, and things like that, which will be several tenders coming out as well going forward. In terms of the consolidated components, then something that we have considered, we have taken into account many different considerations, of course, in terms of the project requirements, value for money. Obviously, we have to consider the supply market, how the logistics and handling can work, and think about standardization in all of that, in ensuring value for money and ensuring that the quality will also be standardized and will be of a high level. Then also in terms of the contractual mechanisms and risks, we have had various considerations, and what we have derived at, just as an example, the study that was undertaken on the component sourcing. Here is an example on the turnouts, showing the catchment area of the main potential suppliers and providing considerations that we need to think about going forward. And what we have derived at is a list of various main components and items that could be consolidated, and you can of course dwell on it and ask us questions afterwards by all means as well. So track elements and concrete items have been proposed to be centralized to consolidated procurement, and also some other elements in terms of fencing and noise barriers as well. And there are future considerations in terms of electrification items, command and control items, IT structure and items, as well as some other concrete structures, where the market consultations have been and are being undertaken in addition to the previous studies, and further assessments will be done to devise the way forward. And in terms of the construction procurement, this has to obviously go hand in hand with the material delivery. And if we do consolidated purchases, then we have to make sure that the free issue materials, as it were, this is going to be provided on time and in a structured manner to the construction contractors as well. So these two topics go very much hand in hand, and they both have to take into account very strictly the project requirements, the project timeline. In terms of the construction procurement strategy, we've had to think about the fact that we will have differing sections and differing objects. There will be many different items to consider along the whole Rail Baltica corridor, which is 870 kilometers long. And of course the supplier market as well, which is in some instances we have also sufficient market locally, but in some cases the local market may not necessarily have the required expertise, and we want to have the best of both the international and the local market to really make sure that we achieve success for the project and maximize the involvement of the best people and best companies involved. With that in mind, we have also thought about various contractual mechanisms and project management approaches, as well as the interfaces and risks involved. And we have three main contracting options that are being contemplated to be used on a case-by-case basis. First of all, the fixed price contracting approach, which is a traditional approach and well known in the Baltics as well. Then the target price remeasurable approach, which is not so well known in the Baltics, but is more suited for complex objects or contracts, and provides better ability to together with the contracting party to manage the risk and the delivery. And then we have the prime contractor approach, which is something that some of you may know was used also on the London Olympics, and provides an ability to tender the requirements early, and whilst it provides a certain margin on top of the packages, then it gives an ability to reduce interface risks and provides a quicker way to the market for very time-sensitive packages. And this involves an approach where the prime contractor would then tender the sub-packages and be responsible for that, and that would be then done according to the requirements agreed with the prime contractor. So these are the main topics that we currently are proceeding with in terms of the procurement at Rail Baltica. And some main considerations also, please make sure that you take a look on our website at the requirements that we have for tenders and for taking part in any of the procurement exercises or market researches that we have. We continuously update and provide information on there. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch and let us know. I'm very conscious that my time for the presentation has already ended, and that this is a short sort of a presentation only, not providing the ability maybe to provide all the necessary detail. But if you do have any questions, then of course please do get in touch with us, and we're more than happy to advise and provide any answers to the questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Very enlightening, very detailed as well. But of course, you know, all right, yes, you were a little over time, but we'll forgive you for that, because you have got a very bold statement to try and achieve in driving the economic development of your region, and I think that's something that we need to understand, that the way in which the money that you've got is spent is being done correctly and wisely. I'm going to move us on, if I may, but just a reminder to everybody that questions will be taken at the end. So yes, although Christian did say you can send him questions, there will be the opportunity, and I see that from the question section on our on the system here that we've got 1 or 2 questions already. There is still time, ladies and gentlemen, for you to reflect on further questions. So now, yet another mega project that we have in Europe, and this time in Switzerland. And I'm going to introduce you to 2 gentlemen who are going to share this presentation. They are Giuseppe Venditti and Sandro Francesconi, one of whom is the head of Sandro is the head of administration at the Brenner Base Tunnel, which is has an acronym of BBT. So if you hear them talking of BBT, you know what that is. And Giuseppe Venditti has got this wonderful title of Head of Realizations Department. I'm sure we'll have we will get a better understanding of what that is as they go through how they are approaching this enormous undertaking that they've got here. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Simon, and good morning, everybody from a hot and sunny northern Italy. Actually, we are indeed 2 speakers: Giuseppe Venditti sitting on my right side, and myself, Sandro Francesconi. We are 2 sitting at the same table, but as you see, respecting the required social distance.
Good morning to everybody.
As we are 2, we have divided the presentation in 2 parts. In the first part, I will tell you something about our project and about the company, the BBT SE company, managing the project itself. And then Giuseppe will tell you something about the strategy of the construction of the project and something about the latest process of the registered at our construction sites. So, well, this map you know probably already. This Harold showed it already before. These are the 9 core network corridors of the Trans-European Transport Network. BBT, the Brenner Base Tunnel, is the centerpiece of the Scandinavian Mediterranean corridor. The BBT, which runs from, well, the Russian border, the Finnish-Russian border through Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Austria, Italy, and ends up in Malta. BBT is the centerpiece, as said, and connects the cross-border section between Austria and Italy. The ScanMed corridor is it's a very important, one of the longest and in terms of economic and population, economical terms and population important corridors. In the regions where the corridors go through, live more than 22% of the population of the European Union, and the same regions contributes to more than 1/4 of the gross national product, international product in that sense, of the European Union. The company BBTSC, well, BBTSC is a unique company. Is a unique company in the sense that it has 2 souls, the Italian and the Austrian souls, and it was funded according to a regulation. We haven't invented this kind of typology of company. The Societas Europea was created by a EU regulation, namely the 2157 of 2001, where it is stated that a Societas Europea can be established on the territory of the European Union to promote common interests of 2 or more member states. In our case, it's 2, it's Austria and Italy, of course, which in 2004 decided to establish the company whose complete name actually is Galleria di Base del Brennero, Italian, Brenner Basistunnel, German, and BBTSC, it's the acronym, of course. As said, it was created in 2004 with the original mandate to plan the project. The planning was concluded in 2009 with its approval, and in 2011 the mandate was extended to construct the tunnel, the main tunnels of the project. As say, the company is unique, transnational. It has 1 legal seat, but the legal the seat, the legal seat, is transferred periodically from Austria to Italy and back to Austria. It used to be in Austria until 2011 in the planning phase of the project. It is currently in Italy, in Bolzano, where we are sitting now, for the construction phase. And one day, once the project will be realized and we will get in the management phase, it will go back to Austria, Innsbruck. The shareholders of BBT, as said, is 50% Austrian company, and the 50% Austrian shares are owned by ÖBB, the railway manager, the Austrian railway manager. The 50% Italian share are all owned by the Tunnel Ferroviario del Brennero company. This is a financial box controlled with almost 90% by RFI, the Italian railway manager, but also shares are owned by the provinces of Bolzano, Trento, and Verona, which are the regions related to the tunnels in the sense that the access routes to the tunnel is going through these three provinces. Who pays for it? Well, EU has the largest share, between 40 and 50%, depending on the activities, 40 for the works, 50 for the studies, and the remaining part is equally shared by Austria and Italy. To give you an idea, to date, Austria has guaranteed the coverage of the whole cost of the project, but assigned already officially is 3.3 billion euros. Italy has made his part so far, has also guaranteed the coverage of the whole project, but so far we have in Italy an assignment of more than 3 billion euros. The project, well, this picture is a bit upside down. North is on the west side, north is on the left side, where you see the city of Innsbruck here down in the valley, and the south, so Italy is on the right side with the city of Fortezza here. You see the green line is the existing line, the railway line in use right now. As you see, it's very curvy. It follows a bit the morphology of the mountains of the valley, while the new line, the yellow line, will connect directly the two towns. The direct connection between Fortezza in Italy and Innsbruck will be 55 kilometers long. However, the trains, the long distance trains traveling through the Alps, which will not stop in Innsbruck, will remain underground for 64 kilometers. That is from Fortezza through the Brenner-based tunnel, which will be interconnected with the already existing bypass of Innsbruck, which is 9 kilometers long. So all in all, the long distance train will travel for 64 kilometers underground in the Brenner-based tunnel. Well, the big advantage of having a base tunnel means that it runs at the base of a mountain, okay, is not only that the stretch can be much shorter, of course, it's direct and not so curvy as I showed you in the previous slide, but also that we can avoid high slopes, the high slopes we have currently. Currently on the actual railway line, the existing line, we have up to a slope of up to 26 per mile, okay. In the new line, the BBT is planned to have a maximum slope of 7 per mile. That's to guarantee that the high-speed train can travel easily through the tunnel. Having this slower slope will allow us to reduce the number of locomotives per train from the current 2 to 3 locomotives to 1. The trains will be much longer, 300 meters longer than the maximum train length we have now. It can be more heavy, of course, heavier, of course, up to 2,000 tons. And of course, travel time, both for freight and passengers, will be substantially decreased, down to 35 minutes comparing to almost 2 hours for freight, and less than half an hour comparing to 1 hour and 20 minutes for passenger trains. So I think I reached the end of my first part, so I give the floor to Giuseppe, who will continue with the interesting and full part, so the construction strategy and the works.
Thanks, Sandro. As Sandro said before, in the second part, we will see the construction strategy and the progress of the work about the BBT. In this slide, we can see the commissioning plan. We will proceed to describe the various lots using this space-time diagram. The tender activity are divided in two main phases. The first concerns the civil engineering works, and the second has to do with the railway tracks and technology system. The final phase, of course, is commissioning and the start of operation. Let's see the first phase. We have Aikamules lot, Ampas, Arental, Innsbruck, Wolf 1, Mules 1, Wolf 2, Tulferfonds, all of which have already been completed. To follow, we have Isarco River Underpass, Mules 2-3, Fons Brenner lot, and Sealschuld Fons lot. These are under construction, and as in the case of Seal Fons lot, the tender procedure is currently in preparation. The commissioning plan ends with the railway track and the technology system lot, and with the commission. The lots are being excavated both using blasting method, drill and blasting method, and a mechanical method with tunnel boring machine. In this slide, you can see the sections, both completed and yet to be completed, using the two excavation methods. The tunnels are excavated through 5 main types of rock mass that you can see in this geological profile. This slide shows the current excavation level of the Brenner Beat Tunnel, about 127 kilometers of tunnels already excavated. And there are also the detail about the railway tunnel, exploratory tunnel, and other tunnels. We are at progress of about 55%. In this picture, you can see the green markings that shows the excavated stretch, already excavated. In 2020, we expected to excavate another 25 kilometers of tunnel. Starting from this slide, we will see an overview of the main lots in the BBT. This is Tulferfonds lot. The works on this lot began in 2014. And they are now basically completed. This lot includes the connecting tunnel, as we said before, to the existing railway bypass in Innsbruck and the emergency tunnel running parallel to it. Fons Brenner lot. Fons Brenner lot is the longest construction lot in the Austrian part of the BBT, with a total of 52 kilometers of tunnels to be excavated in this lot. The lot are being excavated in part using drill and blast method, and the main part will be excavated with a mechanical method with 2 tunnel boring machines. most of the spoil excavated in Austria that can't be recycled will be disposed of at the Padasterdal site, which has a capacity of about 7.7 million of cubic meters. The spoil is transported to the site using conveyor belts located inside the exploratory and the main railway tunnel. The northernmost connection between the Brenner base tunnel and the main station in Innsbruck runs through the Seal Gorge for about 600 meters. The stretch of line itself is not long, but the works are extremely challenging. There are also a large number of existing infrastructure here there. Mules 2-3. This lot is the longest construction lot in the Italian part of the BBT, with a total of 66 kilometers of tunnels to be excavated. The lot, also this lot are being excavated using both blasting method and mechanical method with 3 tunnel boring machines. Here is an excavation front using drill and blast method in Mueller's 2-3. On the right side of the slide, there are also some data on this type of excavation. Here we are inside the backup, one of the 3 TBMs excavating in Mueller's 2-3 lot. On the right side, also in this case, you can see some characteristics of the machine. This is a picture of our tubing rings, which are produced not far from the tunnels in the Ringer Valley. We set up a production plant that will recycle 700,000 meter cube of excavated spoil.
Gentlemen, sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you to draw to your conclusions, please? With time, we're running out of time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have Isarco River underpass, the southernmost lot of the BBT. And this is a picture, aerial photo of Isarco River underpass. You can see the 4 shafts will be used to apply the ground freezing technology. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much indeed for that overview of the intensive and detailed work that you are undertaking in developing the Brenner tunnel. We are, as I said, and I'm sorry to have interrupted you, chaps, but I mean that's we are. Time isn't the friend of no man, as they say, and nor is it of our next speaker, Valentina Monaco, who is from the TÜV Sud, and where she is the global head of rail infrastructure. Valentina, I'm not going to say any more about you. You can tell everybody what about yourself and tell us your story. Thanks. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I think the poll is ongoing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I do apologise. I should have said about the poll. Silly me. Okay. There's me worrying about time more than anything else. What is the most important aspect of rail track component procurement? Is it product quality, cost efficiency, supply logistics, or centralized procurement coordination? If you haven't already done so, please vote now. And Valentina will come to the results of that perhaps after you've at the end of your presentation, so that we can see what the result is.
Exactly. Fine, then I will share my desktop. I think we have the results, yes? Good to see. Good to see that product quality is
the result
the most
came in
wanted one.
product quality.
Good to see that. Fine, then I will share my presentation. And I didn't get to the right.
I can't drive that part of it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because the rights are not, okay, now I got the rights, I'm sharing. Fine. Do you see something?
I can see you.
That's good.
Yes,
At
your
least
presentation is, we can see your presentation, Valentina.
Fine, fine. Thank you very much. So
Glad you can, because
I will briefly go through impression. I will give you some impression about the Rail Baltica component sourcing strategy, because we were involved within the Rail Baltica project in a supplier market study, which touched different themes. For example, benchmarking of track component. Then we went through the detailed analysis of which are the suitable track components, taking care of the frame condition all around along the line. We concentrated also on a life cycle cost calculation, and we also analyzed the possible procurement strategies, approaches and strategies. All that results in a list of main components and manufacturers, evaluation of central decentral purchasing. Then we had some list of alternative component or innovative component that could be chosen. And as I told you before, life cycle cost calculation, and all that was done by a mixed team from TÜV experts. The Technical University of Graz was involved in the life cycle calculations, and then we had a couple of freelancer and the expert from Deutsche Bahn supporting us, especially in the field of experience in the last 13 years with the similar railways line. When we speak about the benchmarking, we concentrate basically on the typical track components, which are sleepers rail, rail fastening, turnouts, and rail extension joints. And we had to define some criteria, and therefore we say, okay, we should start. And we say, we take Riga as the center of evaluation, the center point for us, because it's in the middle of the 3 Baltic countries. We define a radius. We define that we would have some more information about production capacity of the different manufacturers, type of production. For example, if we need the 61 rails, a 350 HT or 260, type, transport and logistic, and certification, if the product are already certified or already in use by other railways. The outcome, you saw already some spots in Christian's presentation. The outcome was basically this. We defined 3 cycles, green cycles, which are related to the distance, yes? Because we wanted to see first how many manufacturers are available already in the Baltic countries. We heard today that anyway an important thing is to develop also a new market in those countries, and therefore this was the first focus, to see, do we have something in those countries or we have to look abroad? And the results were pretty clear, because for example, if we speak to the rails, we see that the main manufacturers are outside or outside the Baltic countries, but anyway not so far away, anyway in the green cycles, yes? And we started to a campaign where we interviewed the main manufacturers we have mostly in Europe, and we also enlarged this to international manufacturers. And what we did is just we gave them which are the requirements of the design guidelines of the Rail Baltica line, and we insert a number of questions which would allow us to make a really objective evaluation of the manufacturers. Our main scope was to deliver to Rail Baltica a really objective impression about what is the market for track components around, mostly around Europe, and for some components, also international suppliers. These are the differences I showed you before. If I go back here, you see in the Baltic countries for rails, we didn't have manufacturers, but once we stepped into the turnouts, the track component, we saw, okay, there are manufacturers in the Baltic countries, are also manufacturers which are one of the market leader in the world. We have also within the green cycles competitors, good competitors at the same level. So this was anyway a big step forward to say there are different situations related to the different components. Then when we stepped into the sleepers, we recognized that there are also local companies, but as you will see later, there will be a need of an upgrade, but we were informed that there is the big interest to, of course, upgrade the production in the Baltic countries. So at the end, what we understood from this benchmarking study was, okay, that and an extended number of companies that were interviewed. Some of them decided not to take part to this interview. We understood, as I told you before, that for some components we have local manufacturers. We understood that there are international suppliers which are willing to export their technology to the Baltic countries and joint venture with local companies. And we understood that one of the challenge points could be the logistic, but all of them answered us, this is anyway manageable. Then we went further and we started to investigate from the technical point of view about the track component that were defined in design guidelines. We took two German comparable mixed traffic high-speed lines that are already since 30 years under operation, and right now they are in the phase of renewal of track work. So we could use all the experience they had in order to advise the Rail Baltica on which could be the difficulties or which could be the best choice in order to have a long-lasting line and with less cost for maintenance. And we try to link all those information. So we had the Rail Baltica requirements, some additional requirements, our recommendation, and anyway the linked list of the possible supplier for the listed track components. We introduced also some innovative or anyway not listed in the guidelines components, which could have anyway a benefit for the line. And what we understood at the end is that, of course, a standardization of the track components is key for low cost and high quality maintenance. Standardized solution anyway easier for training of maintenance staff. And one important thing is that at the moment where it will be decided to give the line to different contractors, of course it is easier to make comparison with regards to the price. We touched, but just touched also the point related to work basis, because we know the actual network has a gauge of 1520, and the new line will be with 1435 millimeters. So it is important anyway to know that we have to transport construction materials, and therefore it was highly suggested to really develop or go much more into details with the issue related to logistic, how to manage it, and which connection should be done and which port should be used in order to transport in the easiest and quickest way the construction material. We had some additional recommendations, which are also from your poll. It was nice to see that if you see also as us that the quality of the track component have a big importance over the life cycle of the line. And of course, we suggested to have to follow the European standard, the TSI standards, because we are on a 10 network, and to really follow the requirement of the detailed design and technical specification and so on. But this is nothing new. When we stepped in the part life cycle calculation, we based our life cycle calculation on the Austrian price level because, as you know, the Rail Baltica is right now tendering. Therefore, there are no values based on experience. So we took the values based on the Austrian experience, which is pretty large. And we went through and analyzed the track components, which we defined in the previous 4 packages. And it came out also that we could connect also not only the typical track component, but also some innovative components that could bring a benefit to the life of the line. The output of this calculation, it was just to see normally in a life cycle of a component of a line, when we have to invest money, which are the components that we should use, what is the traffic volume, and then we identify with a cost of operational interest and which should be the most suitable components according to the experience, as I told you, that we had in Austria. And so it came out, for example, for the rails, we should choose R260 rails for radius bigger than 2,000 meters, and so on. The same has been done for all components, as I told you before. So for sleepers, we came out with the table, which was also taken from the Austrian experience. What was very important, it was also the part related to the ballast strategy, because as you know, in the Baltic countries, there is not the ballast with high required quality. And if you can see from this life cycle calculation, taking a low quality ballast would increase of about 68% the cost of the line. And then we stepped in the procurement approach. So we said we have to give us a limit. We defined 5 different possible procurement approaches. It was a centralized with call-offs by the contractor, national implementing bodies, construction contractor, and construction contractors with the section length of 20 kilometers. The first one, it was between 100 and 150 kilometers. Based on that, we went and we tried to think which kind of procurement strategy could be applied on the basis also of all the results we collected in the previous work packages. And we defined that it would be maybe suitable to define a local market with a single sourcing, dual sourcing, and multiple sources, an international market with single sourcing, dual sourcing, and multiple sources. And what we did is we made as SWOT analysis, highlighting the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats of all those procurement strategies. Based
Valentina,
on that,
sorry to interrupt, but could you draw to you?
Yes,
please.
This is the last slide. We
Perfect.
went on a matrix with the weighted point, so we defined which could be the best strategy, and we performed a generic risk evaluation, and we come out with some results like a centralized procurement would be we call off by contractor would be maybe the best suitable solution, that the owner of the project should install a strong technical team combined with the procurement team, and the purchasing department should follow all the processes from the tendering phase to the delivery of material. Thank you very much to all of you.
Valentina, thank you very much indeed, and terribly sorry that I had to interrupt you, but we need to leave a little bit of time for questions and so on at the end. So thank you very much indeed, and thank you indeed to all of the speakers this morning. There are a number of questions that have emerged via the question thing, the question box, the screen. Now, I have to say that some of the questions are probably rather technical and rather specific to you, Christian. I don't intend to pick those out necessarily as questions for debate now, but I would recommend if you could look at the question panel if you've not already done so. There are a number of points there related in particular to the Riga Airport railway station and one or two other areas, which are probably best dealt with by you offline directly with the individual concerned. What I'd like to also then pick out through the chat, through the questions that have been made, there was one related to military transport, but I think that question has been answered because Harold Reuters mentioned it in his presentation. And whilst I'm speaking, if any of you can hear a siren in the background, it's because in northern France they test the flood warning on the first day of the month, and that's where we are. So it's not that the Martians are landing. If you can hear the noise, it's because of that. Now there are a few people with their hands up in the and I'll pick up on those three as well. But what I ask is that you say who you are, where you're from, and if your question is specific to a particular topic on the procurement strategy, which of course is really what is quite important in all of this, then I would ask that you direct your question immediately to Christian himself, rather than taking up too much time here. So I'm going to get this name wrong now, so I'm just going to say your first name, Mantas Butrimavi. Oh dear, I can't say that. I'll let you get on with it. And you have the floor. You can speak.
I believe he may not be online, Simon. Shall we go to next?
Yeah, well, if he's not online, then he's lost. Okay, Stefan Delic.
Stefan Delic.
Stefan, if you could state your name and your organization, please, and then ask your question.
Presence, I accidentally pressed the button. I accidentally pressed the button. I don't want to ask a question.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Thank you. Right, then we'll move into the question, into the questions themselves. Harold, there's a question there for you, actually, if I could direct your attention to that, where it says that there is a so there was a question related to the experience of the Mediterranean corridor between Spain and France is similar to Rail Baltica because of the different gauge, Iberian versus UIC, as you said in your presentation. Is there any specific European fund for the necessary new rolling stock for state or private companies in these new pathways for either Rail Baltica or the Mediterranean corridor? Are you there, Harold?
I'm unmuted now. Yes, there was
Okay.
simply the muting. No, thank you, Simon. We do fund from the Connecting Europe facility and from also the cohesion funds, the infrastructure. The fleets are partially funded by us in the current period, but we will have a bigger opening in the next one. So as of 21 to 27, we expect that there will be more support available for the equipment or buying of fleets through the Invest EU instrument, and that is not a typical thing like CEF with grants. It is a scheme where guarantees are given so that the taking up of loans for buying that kind of equipment are let's say shored up or secured from all sides. So the answer in short is yes. If you would like to know more, feel free to contact us. Invest EU will be the program, and we will be happy to work on it with you. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed. And Kaspers, I've got a question here for you. how will you ensure? No, that wasn't the question. Sorry, yes. How do you see the long-term use of Rail Baltica, assuming, of course, you can start in 2026, which, of course, is quite a challenging timescale. Perhaps you can comment on whether that's realistic or not. But how do you see the long-term use of Rail Baltica? And there's a couple of questions coming in as well on the question panel as well, related to electrification and whether it's catenary or track-based. Perhaps you can comment on all of those in one hit.
Thanks, Simon. Unfortunately, I can't see the other questions, but let me take the one on the traffic and on the timeline. Well, of course, we have done traffic forecasts, the ones that we did in 2017. We will also be updating. There will be a major traffic forecast modeling exercise that's actually starting now. We will publish the tender sometime within the upcoming 2 months for a new traffic demand model. But generally, we have a good understanding of what kind of freight and passenger flows we can forecast. And generally, if we think about the early phase, let's say first 5 to 10 years of Rail Baltica operation, beyond 2026, thereabouts 2030, we could think about around 5 million tons of 5 million passengers and 15 million tons of freight, mostly general cargo, containerized freight, trailers, including piggyback trailers on rails. But I think what is the critical element here, just by doing traffic forecasts, it doesn't mean that these freight flows and passenger flows will simply fall into our lap. So that's why it is very important not just to focus on whatever estimates we can come up with. Those are very important because those cement the cost-benefit profile for the project. But at the same time, we have to work very coherently and very proactively to actually enable that traffic to materialize, both from the infrastructural point of view, in terms of the operational procedures, in terms of infrastructure maintenance arrangements, in terms of commercial promotion. So that's why from day one, we have been very active in engaging with the future user community, with all of these players that will form the part of the Rail Baltic ecosystem in the operational phase, to make sure that we calibrate the infrastructure and put in place the necessary, again, infrastructural and commercial foundations for that traffic to materialize. In terms of 2026 as the date, and clearly it's been emphasized today, it's a pretty ambitious timeline. We are committed to that, and hopefully we will, starting from that date, deliver an operational railway. I mean, there will be some developments that maybe take slightly longer, but the basic Rail Baltica, as in its intended scope, we should be able to deliver. But again, something that is very important to focus, there are at least 3 key elements in any kind of mega project and any project development. It's not just the timeline, it's also, of course, the cost, and especially cost efficiency. And again, treating CapEx not just as a cost, because often carries a negative connotation, but rather as an investment opportunity. So as long as you can justify the additional benefits and additional added value, not just for the Baltic states, but for Europe, investment is actually a good thing. And that's why I'm very happy to see the Commission taking very active stance in the recovery proposal, also with a strong infrastructure component that Harald explained. But of course, part of that key triangle with cost and timeline, you also have the quality and the scope of the project. So those are equally important. So in other words, politically, we should not focus just on the buzzword 2026 date, but try and strike a good balance between all of these key elements, because Rail Baltica is for the next 100 years. This is not just for 2026 and maybe a few years after. Back to you, Simon. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, it's very helpful if people say when like exactly like that, then we know that it's a bit like on the television. And back to the studio. I've got a question here about and Christian, this is for you, about are you planning to tender cybersecurity protection within the overall packages for electrification and ERTMS, or separately?
All right, thank you for the question. This has not been actually decided yet, because we are currently in the middle of the command and control system and electrification study still. we have done the first studies, and now we're going forward with devising the more precise strategies. So currently we are approaching the decisions on the qualification phase for energy subsystems, and following that we will take the next step to contract and undertake the further studies to decide on the strategy. And the same we intend to do with the command and control system as well going forward. So these decisions are yet to come. So please keep yourself up to date with our website. It is possible that those which consider cybersecurity will be part of the overall package, but it's possible that for some pragmatic reasons it is tendered separately. This has not yet been decided. But overall, what I can say is sort of the approach.
Have you done any work with BBT, the Brenner people, on comparison, on contrasting how your procurement strategy and their procurement strategy and the procurement rules are they the same? Are they different? Is there a problem, or are there differences between the laws that you have to apply in the Baltic states compared to the laws that have to be applied in Switzerland or in Italy? Have you done anything like that?
Yes, we are benchmarking on an ongoing basis. So we, as part of our studies that we undertake as well, which also Valentina earlier mentioned, I think referred to that we have done these benchmarking exercises against other projects. But we have these distinct differences. So even though we follow the EU directives with regards to the public procurement, then we still have different national legislation. So in Rail Baltica, we have to apply as a coordinator the Latvian public procurement legislation, which is quite strict and maybe in some instances much stricter than some of the other European countries' legislation in terms of procurement.
Sandra, would you like to comment on it from the BBT angle?
Of course, thank you, Samuel. Yeah, well, I can confirm what Christian said. For us is as well the legal basis is of course the European procurement law. So Directive 25 of 2014 for special sectors, as transported into the national laws, Italian and Austrian laws, of course. So BBT carries out its tendering procedures according to the applicable Italian, Austrian law, national public laws, depending on the country where the procurement will take place. So for works to be performed in Austria, we apply for the procurement phase, the Austrian law. For procurements, for works to be performed in Italy, we apply the Italian procurement law. There is another particular effect for the transnational procurements, of course, and there the legal seat plays a role. Of course, we in our procurement strategy, if you want, we have decided to apply the national procurement law of the legal seat for transnational procurements, and well, there are important ones. We had a lot of monitoring, for example, transnational monitoring contracts assigned through legal seat national law, and in the future we will have a very big one. Giuseppe mentioned it before. It's the railway technology procurement, both for planning and for the realization of the rail technology. There we will use the Italian law because the legal seat is currently in Bolzano, so in Italy.
Thank you for your thank you for the question, for the answer rather. Now, Kaspers, back to you. In your slides, you showed us a map of the Rail Baltica overview, and you had right at the top of your map a nice wavy line and a boat linking Tallinn with Helsinki. But we've heard talk of a tunnel. Is that featuring in your work, or is that something which might become separate?
Well, conceptually, there's of course a lot of things in common between these two projects. Our joint venture is not directly responsible to develop that connection. Of course, we believe in the economic case of that connection. Clearly, Rail Baltica is a prerequisite for that kind of connection to make sense. It is also a major mega project in its own right, a major endeavor between the two countries. So we certainly support the idea, the economic case. I think both the Estonian and Finnish governments are very actively involved. There's also a number of private initiatives. So from the economic point of view, we do support that. That could clearly also support the wider connection between Rail Baltica and then all the way to the Arctic region. And then Finland, of course, is a transportation island. In many ways, is always looking for ways to diversify its supply chains. Initially, before a fixed link is built, the Rail Baltica and the short sea shipping in the Finnish Bay will kind of bridge that missing link. But going forward, let's say a few more decades from now, I would foresee that it makes sense to develop a fixed connection and to create full-fledged connectivity all the way to the Arctic region by rail.
I can see Harold smiling. Does that resonate with you, Harold?
Let's see. I think that we will ask Sandro and Giuseppe to move to Tallinn to dig this 100 kilometer tunnel. Then there's a little bit of a sense of realism that has to come to that project because environmental impact assessments and so on will have to be done, and then of course the economics have to be calculated. It is massively interesting, Simon, because it would allow to also tackle, of course, the last, as Kasper said, island that we still have with 1424 millimeters of rail gauge. And then we can have perhaps the new line Helsinki-Tampere built with multiple sleepers. Why not? One can dream also in 2020 in times of COVID. But I have to warn, realism is necessary. This is going to be a major thing, and it will not be easy. So let's see.
Yeah, you make the reference there, of course, to the track gauge, and of course we know that the Baltic states are operating traditionally on the 1520 gauge, and indeed Finland is operating on 1522 or 1524 even, which I think which is completely different. And yet Rail Baltica is going to be UIC 1435 mil gauge. Presumably the interfaces, the operational interfaces, I speak as an operator of many years, so this is sort of dear to my heart. But how are the interfaces being handled in terms of particularly gauge difference and the places where there will be inevitably changeover between the existing system and the new system? Jaspers.
Well, it's not only inevitable, it's also something that we actively encourage, both on the passenger side and on the freight side. On the passenger side, clearly in some of the main international stations, like the Uulamiste station in Tallinn or Riga Central Station, Kaunas, Vilnius, clearly there will be an interaction with the wide gauge rail next to the European gauge, and of course, hopefully we want to enable that intermodality between the commuter network, which is currently based on the wide gauge, and the international high-speed network with Rail Baltica. So that synergy should definitely be there in the passenger stations, but equally so also for the freight facilities. I mean, there's a reason that these intermodal facilities are located on the crossroads between the existing wide gauge system, including those connections in ports like Port of Muuga, and the new European gauge, because part of our business case, part of our freight volume forecasts is clearly also transshipment between the European gauge and the wide gauge. Hopefully also Baltic states can emerge as an alternative gateway for the Euro-Asia overland traffic, and that alone is a strong component of the future business case, which requires full intermodality between the wide gauge and the UIC gauge.
Indeed. You mentioned in your presentation, Kaspers, about ERTMS level 2. Is that the same in the Brenner Tunnel, gentlemen? Sandro, Giuseppe, are you going to be using ERTMS or ETCS level 2 in the tunnel?
Yes. We are foreseeing ERTMS level 2 also in BBT tunnel. This is a standard for our corridor.
And presumably, as the timescales for your project are quite similar, in fact, to the timescales for Rail Baltica, you've got the opportunity also in the Brenner Tunnel to become an interesting underground trial for FRMCS as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, this is going to be the model, the standard that we will be applying moving forward. And of course, being able to try that in an underground situation will be very interesting to make sure that it all works. Ladies and gentlemen, we are over time now. I would like just to sort of, if I may, draw this event to a conclusion. As Jules said at the beginning of his, right at the beginning, what seems like an eternity ago, but in fact was only 2 very short hours ago. This is the first of 2. I will leave Jules to announce the next one at the end of. Oh, there it is. It's on the screen. This will be a second round of interesting debate regarding the development of Rail Baltica and of course the various interfaces and what have you. I'd like to thank the speakers this morning, Harold for telling us all about the financial input and some of the legal aspects around it from the European Commission's point of view. Casper's, of course, from the strategic and developmental element of Rail Baltica itself and the interfaces that are likely to be at play. Christian, of course, for your insight on the procurement, and I know that there were other questions on the which we're trying to assign over to you so that you can perhaps respond to them offline in respect to procurement for the Rail Baltica project. Our Italian gentleman in Brenner for the insight on the work that you're doing on the tunnel there, and last but not least, Valentina, of course, for her insight on the perspective of some of the costing and the components elements of the project. If we could give you a round of applause, we would, but of course, down this remote telephone line, all we can do is just do something like this so that you can all see, and I will, on behalf of all of the people that are listening, give you a virtual round of applause for that. Thank you very much indeed. Jules, do you want to say a last word about the next event?
Thank you, Simon, and thank you to all the speakers for the debate. Yes, next session, the part 2, a sustainable and connected Rail Baltica, will be in just over 2 weeks' time, on the 16th of July. 2 o'clock Central European time, and the speakers will be announced in the next few days. So watch this space and website. Thank you very much to Simon for chairing of this session, and we'll see everyone in the audience. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.